strikes me that the main thing to talk about, just it's relevant to a lot of our concerns, a lot of our long-standing concerns, is the Babangida book.
Oh boy,
Yeah,
it's the talk of town, isn't it?
yeah, and
Yes, it is.
Roman vexing a lot of the commentariat.
uh, people are I'm on like 4 platforms where I've seen a pirated copy of that shit, and nobody has any remorse whatsoever.
Yeah, and of course, initially, my response was like, I need to see this book pirated large scale. But
Yeah, I picked that up here somewhere.
but at the same time, like the business model for publishing, which I know is another conversation entirely that America has been trying to
Mm,
get out into, but the business model for publishing in Nigeria doesn't require that you sell books.
not
I think
quite.
the manuscript is the manuscript not bought off once, and then
No, but
however it
and the
floats, it
book
floats.
launch now for the book launch
Now
now.
we got go, are you? I'm even
For
talking on
some,
the more
mm,
administrative level where you will
no,
write the book, you know.
no, for it's a particular kind of book.
Yeah,
So
that's
if you
true.
have if you served in public office, you tend to get that leverage with launches. But if you're writing literary fiction,
Mhm.
Don't write literary fiction. I think if you, I
Or
don't
else you would not
usually give
eat.
financial advice as a show, but I think yeah. But in terms of that level of book, and even some academic books.
A function of the personality of who write them, in
Yeah,
standing for
I agree.
society.
So I mean, they don't care if we pirate the book because the guys already raised 16 point something billion.
My brother, in this economy.
Yeah. So, but somebody who critiqued that paper we were just discussing before we started recording was pointing
Hmm,
out to me that it's not really accurate to say that the economy is in crisis. What do you think of that?
okay.
As in because
Who is it in crisis for?
because the
Oh, see,
GDP is growing. Um, like people who own dollar assets are having a really, really good time. I mean, you could consider this in some ways a boom time. If you look at the Lagos Stock Exchange, it's doing better than it's done. It's like it's doing great. If you look at company profits, if you look at banking sector profits,
Investor confidence.
so is it in crisis? It's not in crisis really. And so, if you see people pledging 16 billion,
it was in crisis, even from that standpoint, it was. So, but it's beginning to balance out, isn't it? So, even for the top shots, it was in crisis, I
but
guess.
that was when, like 2020, because we've not really had a recession for a long time.
No, not even. No, it's not even the recession. No, but I mean, there were companies who posted losses all of last year.
Yes, yes.
Which so even from a corporate, world point of view, I mean, last year was this year. Let me say 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2023. So last year was better than 2023 for most of those guys because they're posting super profits.
Yeah.
So you take Nigerian breweries for instance, but that's also because they don't hike the price of everything now. So
Yeah.
they're not so they don't balance out in
So,
that sense.
so we say that there's been some kind of consolidation where
Uh,
firms that have a certain amount of like market share already were strengthened. That because they could absorb the cost for 1 year, raise price the next year.
They
With
have a shock absorber for all these things because
Yes,
firms that
when
yeah,
it hits them, from like out of the blues. But then within a year, they go self-correct.
mm, and
yeah,
even be stronger in terms of like mopping up the losers,
exactly.
getting more, base. So,
Yeah.
mm,
So
Because even the consumer doesn't need to buy as much. So in terms of sales, they probably aren't making more sales. They're just making more profit because
right, right.
they don't increase cost of sale. Of course, that is commensurate with cost of production.
So
So I talk say for instance, I know they drink up to 5 tiger again. But if I drink 2 or 3, I don't even spend more than when I've been drink
yeah,
five tiger.
yeah,
You know.
right. That's fair. So it's not so much about sales. In fact, and they might be able to shed some staff now Mind you, staff technically is cheaper now.
Because Reserve Army of Labor Day, where
Yeah, and they might be able to cut down on production, but they can still make more profits.
profits, yeah. Give
Um,
us do less, make more.
which goes back to Babangida in a way, because I think this model of the economy that strengthens monopolies, that's about market share and elbowing out competition, that's not really about production as much as it is about like improving basically your place in the market, like muscling out to secure your place in the market. Um, even if it's through partnerships with the state. Uh, you can see that he did a lot for these people. He did a lot for that model. So, I mean, maybe it's fair that you're seeing so many people come out to say like, I owe Babangida a lot. Like there's some quarters where people are like, what do they owe him? And then I think the people who are even more zoomed out, there's a narrative of the Nigerian economy where it's just chaos. So people are like, what's happening? I don't get why Babangida is so loved by a certain segment of
By the cabal.
the upper echelon of business class and the political appointees. So if it was just chaos, then why do they converge around this guy in this way? Um, so I think for those schools, the events of the past couple of, the past week or so have been a bit confusing. Why? Yeah. So I mean, how would you try to dispel some of that confusion?
I think for the ardent students of history that follow like the historical materialist standpoint, introduction of structural adjustment, oil boom, military coup, all that, and the role that every one of these individuals, I mean the presidents, they played. You see that Babangida really was the poster boy of the introduction of this structural adjustment programs, deregulation, cutting funding, facing like channeling state resource to private hands. He really, really hammered
Legally.
that down.
Legally.
What?
But channeling state resources legally to private hands now.
Yeah. So that's like the framework, the architecture for that. So if we fast forward towards like the future, 10 years, 20 years, these billionaires that you're seeing that have now anchored themselves in Nigerian industry, be it oil sector, agriculture, and all these other sectors, you can most likely trace the root of their wealth to this framework that this man has set up in place. So when you see them, no matter the tribe, I'm saying once again, converge around this guy, they are somehow, some way paying homage to the foundations of their wealth. Right. Let me put it that way. And shedding out 100 million, 200 million, it's just a token to pay for the appreciation of that framework that he has granted them, right, to be able to establish themselves as owners or part owners of the Commonwealth of Nigeria and anchoring themselves, on the Nigerian economy, like holding themselves down on the Nigerian economy. So it's the function of the elite to celebrate themselves, create literature, educate us, the downtrodden people and the masses, towards or instill in us a sort of thinking that will let us keep looking at them, aspiring to be like them, creating culture and talk about them, their books, everything. So when occasionally you see Obasanjo write his own book, all these elites write their own books, it's just to skew political discourse away from the real issues, and then for them to tell us their own from their own standpoint or their own point of view. Like, oh yeah, this is what it was, this is what I did. Of course, you're going to paint yourself in a good light, and everyone would say, yeah, because what I've been seeing online from some people like, yeah, oh, he did that, he did this. But if you're following really the trajectory of people's lives, you see that this guy really started the decline or accelerated it.
Right.
Decline. Yeah. So what you're seeing are just a bunch of billionaires showing appreciation and gratitude to this legal framework that this military dictator enshrined for them. That's it.
I get your take. I mean, I guess another way to phrase the question would be to say, why is he publishing a book? And then, does he really deserve praise, the praise he's getting?
Mm. I mean, both questions are difficult to answer. You, I think more so even the second one, whether he's deserving of praise. As to why he's because I don't think he's written the book, but why 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 he's like you say decided to publish, you know, or give his account of the story. I think what most people are looking to see is what he says for June 12th, in
Yeah.
terms of the annulment. Okay. Um, the fundraising event, that's a spin-off of the book launch is just what it is, a spin-off. That's not the main thing, but essentially the way Nigeria is structured, that's
Yeah.
what's made the media sensation, and maybe rightly so for obvious reasons. 16
16
billion or
billion reasons. Yeah.
16
Imagine 16 billion spin-off.
I'm telling you, I mean, it's my brother, even me, I'm wild. But yeah, but so why he wants to do that, we can hazard guesses, maybe to set the record straight why he annulled it. I haven't had a chance
Is he
to
trying
read it.
to imagine?
Sorry?
I mean, or is he trying to imagine?
I know. I mean, it's. I think it's more like. So for instance, if you look at, Abacha didn't quite get chance to tell his own story, did he? Because life, in terms of wasn't fair to him in terms of how long he lived, and then this chap who's been kind of almost semi-bed reading for some time, has. I think he's finding out that he's in the departure. He's been in the departure lounge for a while, and this is something that people have, asked for, decided, yearned for in a way. So I think, rather than let other people tell his story, at least he wants to have a front row seat in how that narrative is shaped. So it's left for people to go read the book and then critique it. I think that it's only in critiquing that we can then decide how we, answer the other part of the question, which is, okay, that part of the question, which is why is he writing the book? It's only when you actually when I if I actually read it, I'd be in a better position. Then the second part, which is why is he getting praise for it? I'd be honest and say that I have not been online as much, or I haven't even engaged in conversations, about Babangida. So what I gather is tidbits from two clips, one by Dangote and the other one by some guy called what's his name now? Ato Eze. Yeah. Um, yeah. Sometimes I mix them up. But yeah, Ato Eze.
Right.
So praise, the way I see it. So I don't know but I'm sure that he's getting praise from the business class, the top
Yeah.
echelon of the business.
That's the praise
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the praise that you're after. Okay, that's fine. And it all goes back. I mean, and they say it. So I don't know. I mean, these two guys say it. One says, "Oh, the Babangida set them up
Yeah.
with the import licensing fees of the sub policy." What they don't go as far as saying is that he also set them up with, the foreign exchange market,
Yes.
Which was a major component of that, structural adjustment program.
Yeah.
So within those two policies within that framework, you can say that the latent birth of crony capitalism was born in Nigeria. So the guy who says it most, without being as polished as Dangote would be Emeka. I don't forget the name I call him now. Yeah, but yeah, the the other guy who who is a massive beneficiary of the Babangida largesse, and he says it pointedly. Babangida introduced him to all the GOCs, the military guys. He awarded oil blocks to this chap, military hardware contracts, and that's how he came into money. You know, he went as far as saying that he did confront Abacha on Babangida's behalf and drove right straight to Niger State to give the report. So these guys are essentially saying that they wouldn't have come into this much wealth, a handful of them, without Babangida being president,
Yeah.
between 1986 and 1990. Was that three?
Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, I think basically, that question kind of answers itself.
Yeah.
Anybody we get to where we don't want to draw 500 million naira large on the table for 4 years, and if he exceeds 4 years, he promises to do more. My brother, you go know the kind of money we they make, as a result of of that policy, of that period, that point in time in Nigeria history. And it's once he set Nigeria on that course, it's been irreversible.
Let me ask this question. The business class at that level is very certain about the kind of policies that made them their wealth. Babangida himself doesn't deny that he followed that blueprint. So why does the myth still persist that there is no blueprint that's governing how the Nigerian economy is being structured from a policy at a policy level? Why does the myth still persist that Nigerian elite have just been basically doing
Industrious. Yeah.
no that because the myth is that that Nigerian elite are kind of peculiar somehow, that they're not like their global counterparts, implement neoliberalism to benefit yourself and cronies. Um, the idea is that there's no policy regime, ideology, or um like framework that can explain these people besides only like kind of very myopic, self-centered pursuit. But looking at the diversity of people in the audience, like people from all corners of the country, in terms of ethnicity, looking at the success of the businesses that have emerged, I mean, you could say that the policy worked in a certain sense. It's in terms of achieving what it set out to achieve. Of course, it didn't set out to achieve communist society. So saying that it impoverished people is like, yeah, but that's not what it tended. It wasn't about poverty alleviation. It was about capital accumulation, which it did a fantastic job at creating. And as you say, market it remained in place basically. I mean, with few modifications um since then. So why do we then make it seem like, oh, Nigeria is a place where there's no straightforward policy apparatus in place? It's just chaos.
It still goes forward to the other side effects of these policies that these people enshrine, because going down the pathway is the funding of education, the killing of critical studies, philosophy, all this critical
Right.
history. So when you've kind of taken like enshrined the type of economics you want to be taught in school, the sort of diverting Nigeria from having much more multiple say in terms of what you're going to be taught in school, kind of education you get in school. What you have is a meal that churns out pro-establishment thinking.
Right.
So the economists that come out, they want to justify the system that's in place. The legal guys that come out, they want to
For a
justify
lot
the
of them,
system.
it's not even neoliberal enough. So
So the thing is, what you have is you get a populace or intelligentsia that is not critical of the system. What you get at best is people that just say, yeah, these guys are just like this. They leave it to human behavior, and this is why they are like this. They're just myopic.
right.
But when you strip it down bare to the numbers, and you correlate to these economic policies and principles and this neoliberalism that this guy brought and hammered down, you can trace the primary wealth accumulation to those principles, but they don't want to show it because then you're exposing their hand and they're going to say, okay, yeah, so if Nigeria is moving
No, no, no,
forward.
but my confusion is that they show it. I mean, they're all lining up to say, as Emeka said, they're even pointing to the specific policies that helped enrich them. Then people will still turn around and be like, there is no policy plan, there's no program to what the Nigerian elite are doing. They are just now anywhere but their face.
Well, you see, inside of that anywhere belly face makes it feel like it's just corruption.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. It's not just corruption. There is a code. There's like all this writing program. If you do this, this is what you get. If you do that, that's what you get. If you open your country up to profiteering, the state playing less in terms of your education, the funding, what you have is some winners that will take everything, corner the wealth, influence the government, vice versa. It plays back and forth. So what you get along the line is that these guys will come and start saying, yeah, this is what happened. And some other people that are not critical enough will say it's corruption, but they're just helping their guys. Anybody that gets there will just keep on helping their guys. That's what it is. But it has a name.
Right.
It has a model. And that's what it is. So when you strip something, you give it its name, then we can start looking for the antithesis of this thing. It's not that people are just corrupt, that, oh, Nigeria, that's why they blanket wash everybody and say that, oh, Nigerians are just corrupt, blah, 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 blah. It's just a system that is milling out and churning out this corruption as a side effect.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not just that they're corrupt, oh, if I'm with my guys and all that. It's because that's the system that's in place.
Right.
So they'll just come and say, yeah, he did this, he did that, but that thing that he did has a framework, and it is that framework that we've been using for a while now, and that's the side effect of cornering the wealth, primary wealth accumulation, capital accumulation with a bunch of people while the masses are immiserated. That's just the name of the system, neoliberalism. So we can then start looking at the alternative. Who are now the champions of the alternatives? Can Nigeria benefit from the alternatives? And all that, that's when we start looking at it. But now that it doesn't have a name, it serves the purpose of keeping these guys there.
Right.
That's what I feel.
Yeah. Megan, how do you see that issue?
Yeah, that's a strong clue.
Right.
Let me try and stay on the part that wages is beating, for a minute. I think that, in doing that, I think that what's important to say, and to amplify is the fact that I think what part of what I hear what you say is that era, has been shrouded in a lot of I don't know what the word is hypocrisy, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that that era remains a blur.
Right.
Perhaps maybe because it's a few decades back. Perhaps maybe because there's a reason why IBB is often referred to as the evil genius or Maradona.
Okay, yeah. So there was some deliberate mystification.
Yeah, so there was some deliberate way. I mean, and you could tell because this was part of, this was at the time when there was an intensification in 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 um in trying to buy the intelligentsia. Okay. Babangida, more than any other leader in Nigeria, tried to string both the right wing and left wing, intelligentsia, and try to see if they could find a common ground. I figured that that's about the time when you started to have, the phrase mixed economy to pumped into the Nigerian lexicon. All right. And then, and truth be told, there were a lot of this, right wing, especially, and even to some extent, left wing intellectuals who couldn't quite make what heads or tail what was happening at the time, and that they would later have to benefit from time itself, going forward. But I also think it's important to mention that and this is to come back to the question that Said asked more pointedly, that this is perhaps, at least to my own mind, the first time that you hear Dangote today, can be referred to as an industrialist, but wasn't at the time, was he? Um, but top captains of industry say as a matter of fact, that this was the policies that we benefited from,
Right.
and as a result of its implementation by this particular government. I don't think I think that's what's most novel about what's happening, what the fallout of this book launch.
Right.
I don't know that I've heard any of them say it that way.
Right. Yeah.
I,
Okay.
I think, yeah,
Okay.
I think that what we have been able to achieve was to decipher. Yeah, you can go in.
No, that's fair. No, I mean, I want you to continue your point. I just wanted to, it's striking that yes, the um previously we were saying it on behalf of capital that when
Mm,
the new regime of accumulation and inaugurated in the 80s was massively beneficial for a wing of capital. It as designed. But they weren't necessarily speaking up to say that. I mean, at least not in such a consistent, clear, equivocal manner. But they just did, you know. Um, so why now? I mean, why, you know, um, in some ways, I guess we're living in, and maybe this is my final question on this topic, but in some ways you could say that we're living in structural adjustment too, right? Because some of the stuff
mm,
that Babangida really wanted to get done was reversed partially by the wave of anti-SAP sentiment, then partially by Abacha, actually, who had a slightly different orientation in
mm-hmm,
the game he was playing. Um, I mean, not the fundamentals, but they didn't go as far as Babangida didn't
mm-hmm,
go as far as he would have wanted. Some of that stuff has now happened. I mean, subsidy removal, you can call it part, yeah, you can say that there's still some element of subsidization, but the extent of subsidy removal that we've now gotten, the extent, especially of the devaluation of the currency that we've now gotten, was something they would have only been able to dream of back then. So is there something peculiar about, does that element of the contemporary context help explain in any way why market forces seem to suddenly be so open about the like policy apparatus, ideological apparatus that are
Oh
supporting?
yes, of course. I mean, the view that you and I are espousing here alongside wage isn't the dominant view, is it?
Right.
Um, the dominant view is that everybody wishes that they were down with it. Everybody wishes that they were is it Atoese, you
Right.
know. This is what the average, upwardly mobile Nigerian aspires to, such that i i within the Nigerian business, corporate world, if you sit down with even your own peers, that
Yeah.
are fully integrated into that world, you begin to hear, you know, citizens being referred to as consumers,
Yeah. Right.
or
Mhm.
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
And I'm not taking a dig at them. I mean, but that it is what it is, isn't it? You begin to hear about market share, right? Um,
Yeah.
you begin to hear about
Capitalization.
yes, you begin to hear about wallet share versus market share, which is a bit of what we were discussing earlier, in terms of how many bottles one bought before, and but so that's basically um, it, it's an ideology that has been bought into almost fully,
Yeah.
whereas in the 70s and the 80s,
Uh,
while there was massive pushback against it,
right.
that pushback hasn't existed in
Right.
in a long time,
Right.
which
Right.
of course you might want to say is a failing of the left, and rightly so, but that's where we are.
Right.
And that's why they're a bit more boisterous about saying it
Yeah.
now.
Because
Uh, yeah.
it's now more obvious than it's ever been. I mean, if I'm hearing you,
Mhm.
it sounds like what you're saying is like it's now more obvious than it's ever been that they're winning. So they're like, oh, it's nothing to hide anymore. Like, because if they came out and gave this kind of conference in the 80s, the NLC would have shut down the country.
They've won.
Yeah,
They're not winning.
Mm.
They've won. They're being celebrated.
or
They
Nance,
won.
Nance would have gone off,
Yeah.
or Win would have shut down
Mhm.
market women or whatever, right? But now, yeah, I mean, none of those people are around, and like you're saying, I mean, stuff that they were saying privately as their worldview is now common, is now just what everyone is now the normal worldview.
People
So
they study out.
yeah,
Those people.
and in fact, I mean, the most serious critics are to the right of these guys, as in they're the people who say you guys are not doing it fast enough or you're not doing it smart enough.
I
Mm.
mean, we're in a period where people are saying that Buhari was leftist or socialist.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
Mm.
yeah,
I mean, OG, you can take it away, but I mean, just bear that in mind that that's where we are.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it's a point you slightly broached when you were talking that opacity of that period back then,
yeah,
sort of where things, you could only hear from it from Tell magazine and just a few magazines. But now it's really, really hard for them to hide anything anymore. Coupled with the fact that, yeah, they
well,
own the superstructure of society, the base now, they've conquered the base in obscurity.
yeah,
But now the superstructure of society that points at these things are owned by them. The media is owned by them. The telecoms owned by them. TV, financial institutions, everything. So they've won. Then the police, army,
yeah,
oil blocks, all that. So what's that aspect of society that's going to come and ask for justice that
yeah,
they don't own? So it's left to the people to kind of claim their thing back and all, so they've
yeah,
won. That's one of the attributes of people that feel like they can't, be called to order or called like retribution can be sought. They just throw it in your face. What are you going to do about it? During this period, we made this. This is how we made our money, and we are billionaires today, and we own this and own that. The wealth has been cornered. We can donate, a portion of this money that will have built schools, equipped pharmacies, and all that, but we're just throwing it on this guy that helped us to steal money, So, yeah, they showed in your face who's going to catch them, who's going to take them to court. Even inside the labor that we're talking about, that's supposed to be the left champions of, the people. A lot of them, the thing is compromised already.
my brother,
Some of them might be there, except I don't even see the thing fully, but some labor guys might have been there.
I mean, of course, Oshomole was probably there, and
Ah,
or maybe he was outside because he was not, he could not enter. He did not have the requisite funds to secure seat, but I'm sure he would
the
have.
requisite forms.
And then Joe Ajero was attending a meeting with the World Bank president in Washington, D.C. So I think based on those factors, the
Did they
expect
play? Are you serious?
no, I'm dead as we can even use that as the
Are
picture.
you,
So the
are you
guy
serious?
they posted on their Instagram, like, wow,
Chineke.
president of the NLC meeting with the World Bank president at the
So
Washington.
it shows you where we're at with all these things. Where is the pushback going to come from?
Yeah,
When they know and have analyzed that the pushback isn't there anymore, then they can come and gloat. Look at Dinomi, like look at all these guys that even riffraff on like in the Nigerian political space. They keep pushing things in front of you in a
If they come for
disgusting
you now,
manner.
you know.
They are
Say they,
crazy.
say they be
They are crazy. They don't be riffraff. They don't be riffraff. They
yeah,
go just they do like say, and there's something I read with Thomas, one publication from Thomas Paine that there comes a time in an unjust society where your wealth is insult to poor people. Your
mhm,
wealth, as you're showing it, becomes an affront
yeah,
to the
We're not
poor
at that
people.
time in
And it's getting
Nigeria.
to that point. It's getting to that point where just ordinarily just flashing what belongs to other people that you stole, that you stole, from people like that was stolen,
yeah.
it becomes an insult,
OAG, this
and
Nigeria.
No, but
I
maybe
mean,
like,
it's
but if OG is not right,
morally, I'm saying
if OG is
morally,
not
Okay.
right, make any of those people go sit down, drive their own car with no escort now, enter market.
that's why, you see, they don't go anywhere
Ah,
without
I would
arms.
like that experiment, but I
You see, they
don't know
go tear
whether
them up.
anybody will be willing cadaver because I'm
Uh-huh,
You
almost
now.
see,
willing.
So
they
that's
I'm
go
the
tear
willing
thing.
to
them up.
bet that the outcome is not what you think it will be.
No, not
That it's
hey.
dangerous for them. That's why they
Mm.
won't risk it.
Yeah, but it's
Dangerous.
nice that you introduced this to be honest. Sorry, I mean, let me just chip
No,
this
no
in.
problem.
Run it,
Because
yeah.
I figure that you guys are making the case for that, that the chances are that they'll be lynched, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
Maybe not lynch per se, but they are not safe. That's just
yeah,
what I would
okay.
put out.
Okay, yes, I agree. If you say they're not safe, because
Yeah, they are not safe.
I think what will happen is that whichever crowd they run into will be split.
yes, I agree. Some people will want
It-
to protect them.
yes,
That's true. So,
yeah, yeah.
so you can say that there's some sort of neoliberalism from below as well.
Hmm.
I am not, yes, I think we have to admit that, especially if they still hold some change for body.
Yeah, and it still comes from conquering their mental space anyway.
Then that's
It's
it.
still that.
But I think, so that we don't also get the listeners to be too depressed, more
Mm.
depressed than they already are. I think, the other side of that equation is also true, which is that there's still some popular conception of this stuff as bad, as fucked up, right? There's still some
I
idea
agree.
that, yeah, that that these guys have sold out um the future of the country, the sort of collective birthright of the country, and that, they deserve to pay
It's
for.
not a hopeless situation.
Yeah, I think there's still some possibility of there's a part of the psyche among, especially the suffering people who don't buy the idea that it's so that we should all be like Dangote ultimately, that the best thing to do is just play the game. You can see it in the way that the obedience, there were some people who were like disappointed. You know what I'm saying? There were
Yeah, I haven't really caught up with that yet. But
some
yeah.
you were like, no, this is, come on, like where do you draw the line? And then some other people were like, no, but isn't that just the game? Why don't you why don't you allow him? If somebody else said the same thing, would you critique them like this? So of course
If it
there's
was you,
yeah, if it was you, go praise
So,
go
so,
he's a respectful guy just trying to respect his elders. You-
so the obedience ideologically and a closed monolithic
Exactly.
uh, group is well, I'd always suspected.
Yeah, exactly. Some people
But I
want
think but I think what's one thing, one phenomenon, maybe that's unfolding that's most reflective of this is where the Nigerian economy is,
Hmm.
or has come to, where it's become. So how which English are they speak? How it's evolved, right?
Yeah.
As a result of, this, if you like, policy flip-flops. So
Hmm.
where you group, as Said likes to do, the Obasanjos and the Babangidas
Hmm.
on one hand, and then maybe the Abachas and the Buharists on the other hand.
Yeah.
So what we have, or
Yeah. Right.
what might be emerging
Third
is
versus
that,
right-wing state.
sorry.
Right-wing statist team versus right-wing pro-market team.
Yes,
Right.
and even within industries, so
Hmm.
that you can have a Dangote refinery fighting for market share vis-a-vis an NNPC, which is, if you
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
state owned,
Yep.
and then there's a raging ideological battle, on that instance,
Yep.
such that, there are people who say, what, fuck it, we're with NNPC, even though they've proven to be shit, for
Yep.
the last, 3 decades. So people are like, you know what, we can as well do away with this bunch of losers since we now have Dangote. You
Yep.
know,
Yep.
it didn't seem as clear cut, but it's beginning to emerge, and I think that's where we're headed.
Yeah.
You know, perhaps this is what people refer to as Nigeria being unique. I don't know. I haven't really
Yeah.
done any
Yeah. Yeah.
extensive research on that, but that's
No, you're
the
right.
general sense that I get. Yeah.
You're right that that I think, if we bring in the ideological question, and not ideology in the 20th century sense, of course. I mean, anyone who listens to this show, I think, has figured that when we talk about ideology in Nigeria, we're not talking about socialism versus capitalism. We're talking about capitalism A versus capitalism B,
mm,
which is which is also, but let me, and so I guess that, yes, Emeka, I think or it sounds like you've written out Dangote paper just now, but
mm,
but separately, I think there is something peculiar about the oil economy, which is
Mm.
that to neoliberalize the oil economy is more difficult, not just
Yes.
because you will get resistance from the left, but because you will get resistance from the right. You'll get resistance from the folks who the wing of capital that grew within the state during the Keynesian period, or grew within the bureaucracy, like the Buharis of
Mm.
and the rest.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have
Traditional
time to
ones.
flesh that out. Yeah.
Well, basically, yeah.
From both for my benefit and for the benefit of
No,
those
I
who
mean, I
listen.
think I'm just like deepening. I think I'm trying to deepen the point you
Mm.
made. That, like, um, you know, the kind of there was a like the pre-neoliberal economy was not managed in an egalitarian way either.
Mm.
Like it wasn't run by the left. Sure,
Mm.
sure, it delivered. Um, it was, it had slightly better welfare outcomes
Mm.
than the current period, but it was also generating immense profits and creating like, a intermediary. They basically OAG's least favorite people, the comprador. It was creating
Mm.
that kind of parasitic bourgeoisie
Mm.
at OAG.
Mm.
Now, the neoliberal economy has created, okay, sure, you can say that the monopolists are still parasitic in a way, but they are more competitive in the open market.
More productive.
They're
Yeah.
more productive. I mean,
Mm.
they're more productive in the open market. I mean, of course, productive is tricky because you remember we're talking about
I agree.
production but they're more profitable. They can play in the market and they can even play in the
Mm.
international market in a way
They
that
can compete.
cannot. They're more competitive. That's it. They're
Mm.
more competitive. So so yeah, I guess it strikes me that um yes, it is having oil and having the old um pre-neoliberal elite and I would say, and I don't want to do the north-south thing, but there's a way in which um the northern element of the bureaucracy, I mean, we can debate this, right? But it seems to me like they had a lot more space within the bureaucracy for various reasons um, in the pre-neoliberal period. So that power that was accumulated, it wasn't easy. They didn't let go of it easily, and in fact, they're still fighting to keep some of it. And the NMPC, I think, as you just said, is one of the
The
bastions
cornerstone.
of power. Yeah, you know. So that fight continues, and I think that fight makes Nigeria peculiar. So you see some policy flip-flops, as you say, because sometimes they grab the levers of power and they pull it back in favor of state
The state bureaucrat.
institutions.
Mm.
Yeah, the state sector. Um, but that fight happens within administrations. It's not just it happens within cabinets. Like you will see, like certain members of the cabinet who you consider themselves products of this kind of um the kind of Kaduna Mafia school or something, the kind of like Sardana school. There's
Mm.
always going to be those people in almost every cabinet because and also they have a lot of money as well. They've managed to accumulate, you can call it corruption, but a lot of money and they have a lot of influence in places like AMCON, within the CBN, these like pools,
Mm.
slush funds within the army, like within the security establishment. Um, so yes, I guess that oil has made it difficult to neoliberalize for the pro-market wing to definitively end the dominance of the power that was accumulated by the kind of statist right that grew up in the pre-neoliberal period. But it's possible, but I suspect that that's the case in a lot of countries. But you know,
Oh, okay.
probably countries that have a very dominant natural resource sector, countries that have oil, for
Mm.
instance. But we would have to check, to see what cases help us compare, most favorably. But we've not been able to do this. A lot of like contemporary, like post-neoliberal political science, political theory, because we leave out they're oblivious to these ideological distinctions, because I think the way that we define ideology has a lot of baggage, um, part of which Babangida helped create, of course, with the mystifications of the 90s. So you can't really. you have to do a lot of this work from scratch because unfortunately it's like there's not much of it that's been done. At least not in these terms.
Now that you say this, it's something I've played with for a while, but also, in recent time, dropped the idea. But it seems that, just listening to you, this might be an interesting time to revisit the idea that in political analysis, especially, the kind that you find in Nigeria, it's almost as if it lets the private sector go. It absolves it of all the blame, of of how Nigeria has been shaped,
Right.
to the extent that it doesn't even interrogate the idea that the private sector has shaped, the state.
This is
You
why I
know,
hate that term political elite. I mean
yeah,
political class. Sorry, political class.
mm,
I mean political
yeah,
elite is fine, but political class, yeah,
mm,
it masks like
mm.
all this stuff.
Because the private then is absorbed or is even
Yeah.
obscured, in that sort of analysis, which then, of course, makes we lose a lot from that kind of watery analysis, where all the blame is heaped on the state. But part of what Dangote and Atoyese were saying essentially in praise singing is that we're a large component of how this country has turned out. In fact, because we're beneficiaries of the way it's turned out.
Yeah.
We can't essentially be absorbed. I mean, it's a strong undercurrent of, I mean, if you were going to take up that kind of criticism, but you don't find that kind of analysis. When the problems of Nigeria is being tabled or being discussed, because for some reason everybody wants to be a Dangote. So
Right.
there's nothing Dangote has done wrong. There's nothing an Atoese has done wrong. I mean, so you take and they are all philanthropists.
As well.
You take
Of course.
you take Atoese. The urban myth is that if you ever find a way past Atoese's second gate and into a city room, the least you're leaving that place with is 250,000 naira. That's just for seeing him. Now, I mean, and you don't get level. Don't be saying you be small boy, you be, mid life, you do your midlife, or you be elderly. In fact, the man they dole out cash. You get as you go big rich now, 2 million, 3 million, 10 million. Just for seeing my brother.
Yeah.
So the idea is that, oh, okay, we can absolve them of how they made money because they are giving back.
Right.
For Dangotes, you can absorb, the Dangotes of this world for making money because they then invested in Nigeria. Like Nigeria, like they're doing Nigeria a favor. I mean, so that's and you can almost be stoned for bringing up this kind of analysis within regular middle class people. So like I really don't know. But by like I said, or like you said, it's not a lost cause. It's not a hopeless situation, but it needs much more rigor in how we interrogate these different levels, the private sector, and how it interfaces with the public sector and then becomes beneficiary. Because of course the popular conversation is that if you run a small business, government doesn't help.
Yes.
Okay. But the government doesn't help because it has chosen to pick its winners.
Absolutely.
So that's, but the small business guys, I mean, all they are looking for is one government contract to hammer.
Right.
So
Right. And at that point they will say, well, things are not that bad. Why don't you wait for the results of the reforms to start bearing fruit?
Or put yourself out there more, interact, communicate, go to TED Talks. Put yourself out there. You have to link or use your LinkedIn. Have you updated your LinkedIn profile? your product, use AI, use your tools,
Optimize.
optimize.
Yeah.
Change your
That's
outlook.
it. Yeah, they won't tell you the background and the
Yeah.
foundations of how, they got that multi-billion naira or multi-million dollar link with the government and all that. So people should be able to follow the money,
Yeah.
trace things, have like a coherent analysis. Then you're not lost in history. You know how your country is progressing, how history is progressing. And to a large point, you'll be able to make a forecast, almost an accurate forecast of where things are going to, because you'll be able to see the balance of forces.
Yeah.
Who and what are the forces in play that are dominant? Where is the nascent forces or force that is growing? And what's the balance of things and how you're able to get in and push forward if you are for social change
Yeah.
or political economic change. So yeah, it helps a lot for people to actually fall back and have an analysis of things than just giving ideas. Because when you look back, you see some things are inconsistent.
Right.
And you feel like, oh, you made a mistake. It's like this, but when you fall back really and analyze things to the core, you see it's progressing in one straight line.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been seeing across the Nigerian history now.
So, I kind of feel that also one lesson from what you guys are saying, what you just said, Oichi, and what Emeka has been saying too, one lesson is that if the left continues to describe the Nigerian ruling elite as like primarily incompetent and primarily parasitic, it will help the business class. It will help mask
Yep.
how they've been plugged into the system and how they're making super profits, how Nigeria works. Nigeria works fantastically for businesses. If we keep kind of emphasizing the incompetence and the corruption, these things are there. I mean, I'm not saying they're not there, but if that's the only message we have, then capital as such is spared, right? Then it starts to seem like, okay, then what we need is like a competent manager of capital, right? Like we just need like yeah, the Buhari or the Obi, we need like a clean,
strong man,
yeah, we need a clean, competent person.
strong messiah.
So, I mean, I think there might be a lesson to learn from capital here is that maybe it's time to start addressing them. I mean, or to bring them into the picture in our analysis, rather than the exclusive focus on. I mean, they deserve every insult we've thrown at them in terms of the state elite. But I think we should be more balanced. We should adopt more of a federal character approach or zone. We should zone the insult from state.
From state to capital,
Market.
state and capital market.
Yeah, because I mean, state capture is really almost impossible without the private sector.
Yeah. So I guess my final thought would be, um, when are we buying the book? I mean, how much are we donating to the library? Because I mean,
How
all
much
the
did they sell? How much did they sell the book? Sir?
about check.
1 billion. Oh, wow.
Like, is it have 10, 15,000? I don't know. But the online pirates have,
Yeah,
they've with their one eye patch
but
They've
given
done
that
a great job.
gotten.
landings,
Yeah,
They've
they've
done
got a great job. So you can go online, just search for the book. I think it's there already. People are just saying if you want the PDF, blah blah blah. These guys don't care about the sales.
yeah.
They just care that your mind is tuned to one direction. And
Well,
Wait,
it is important.
are you okay? How can you care about the sales?
Yeah, you got to made
Did
60
they
for
print?
something
Did
big.
they the first print run? Did they print enough copies to make 16 billion?
you can imagine.
Damn.
Even the people
For
in
the
the
entire
hall,
time sale of the book self.
people in the hall, how many of them picked the book? Well, let me say this. Me as a law-abiding citizen, I don't know about the co-hosts here. But I've said that I've started saving money, which maybe by the time I'm 150 will be enough to buy the book. And I'd encourage,
Purchase this
yeah.
number one New York and Abuja bestseller.
I would encourage other listeners who, like me, are law-abiding to consider doing the same. Just put something aside after you improved your LinkedIn profile, you've gotten that job. Just be putting something little aside. Personal development is very important. Uh, right.
And they love you.
So, so should we? I mean, there's a lot of other things we could potentially talk about over time. I mean, of course, the big other thing to talk about is the spicy new revelations that all this time despite all the analysis, all that we know in terms of the popular elements of the whole history of Boko Haram that we've written, all this time, the real secret is that the USA idea.
USAID.
So
person for streets tell me this thing yesterday. I no come.
you
As
can,
the guy is serious.
you can imagine.
They tell me say fund. I mean, he was alluded, and I'm like, do you know how do I start? How do you start helping this person? Because
Hmm.
he go end in argument. He go tell you saying no waiting in the talk.
Because you see what makes that situation so annoying is that
Ah,
you now find yourself in a position where it sounds like you're now defending the US.
you don't get.
I mean, you can imagine the kind of situation.
And in my own case, it was bad because the guy was buying me beer, so I couldn't even really
Yes.
ginger.
At least you've raised your commentary after the guy had already paid them.
No,
They said,
no, no, no.
well, my friend. Yeah.
He buy me beer. You don't understand. He buy me beer.
Uh,
Buy keep. That's I never finish the one where they drink. He still pay for the one where I go still drink. Then he go. Cause how I want to take argue with that kind of
Ah,
person.
no. That one you could leave out. You can't win all the battles. I mean, but look, ONG science suggests that, yeah, this is a topic to revisit and to take
Yeah.
seriously, to consider the various angles, um, rather than to dismiss it to court. So perhaps we'll have the opportunity to do that in later episodes. But I suppose
People should take they should take their favorite influencers, with a pinch of salt. Or how do they take speak that English?
And all the spicy stuff. Salt alone no do.
for the listeners, if you've come across any interesting reactions to the book that gave you some hope, like people who were able to like get beyond the norm, June 12th or whatever, like actually talk about the stuff that's meaningful to the life of ordinary Nigerians, definitely share and also comment.
You know the crazy thing I've been seeing is some people are now comparing IBB with Abacha online
Oh,
now. That's how low the shit has even sunk.
no, but
So
Emeka was saying, it's like the most interesting critics who are the ones that are associated with the status right. Which I think Abacha was
yeah.
one of the people. They will come out and be like, no, Abacha meant well. I haven't read enough of that stuff to
The
actually.
daughter they Twitter they put some things on there,
No, I read
I
something
wish
about. I read something. I haven't read it, but I came across something about somebody defending Abacha by saying that he saved IBB, who he then described as a coward.
Right.
Something, and I'm sure it's a fallout of this book launch.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm sure.
Thing.
circulating.
Yeah, that's often the level of public discourse too, right? Like it just
Mm.
becomes about people's personal attributes, like just like petty beefs, who saved who was more courageous or cowardly, which totally leaves aside all the stuff that we've been talking about. I mean, I'm sure it's interesting, but it's definitely not encouraging. Um, so, so anyway, yeah. I mean, and there's of course the June 12th angle, which we've completely, thankfully ignored because I'm
Mm.
talking about
I
June.
think it's no more than enough to go people know so much about
No,
that.
I mean
But
that's just your entry, your leeway into stupid ethnicism.
Exactly. I mean, it doesn't get more or less than that. Yeah.
yeah.
Although, I mean, I do want to consider at some point, like whether there is how we would explain from a class and ideological perspective the reason why the June 12 election was annulled. Like, could there have been, I know we're trying to wrap up, so maybe you just leave it as an open question, but could there have been a fear that the SDP had promised too
Which
much?
is the Social Democratic Party.
Right, sorry, yeah, this exactly. I mean, based, the name that even suggests. But
Yeah.
at that point, like a lot of social democratic parties in name in the world had neoliberalized.
Mm.
And if you look at the manifesto of SDP, it didn't really wasn't like promising to overturn the structural adjustment program. But the popular sentiment around the SDP was pretty intense. And of course, a lot of the left that was pursuing entryism went into SDP.
Coalescing, yeah, behind that.
So sometimes I wonder if like some folks around the regime were like, look, we will not be able to manage the fallout. I mean, if Abiola is in power, he's going to be forced to do stuff that will threaten this our new system. I don't know if that's the case. I mean,
It's probable.
it's really speculative, of course, but
It's probable that it's probable because that goodwill, the entry of a lot of forces into his stuff, and it seemed like the in quote man of the people
right.
type of thing. So it might. That's one probable thing, but hey, who knows?
But yeah,
It's plausible, I guess. I
Yeah,
mean, if you weigh that against the fact that the guy who then became um, the leader of the interim government was really, 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 I mean, was capital himself. I don't
right,
know if you can be more pro capital than NS Shileko.
also not calling.
right.
Yeah, so I mean there's something to chase down, that route,
Wow.
but would anything NS Shileko did in terms of policy provide, ample enough justification,
Yeah,
as to why Abacha then overthrew, or was it more of some internal roundings within the military itself,
right.
as opposed to ideology in its strict sense?
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah,
yeah.
it's
Whatever.
something that we can chase down, in future, I guess.